So, welcome all to New Perspectives and the Ideal of Human Unity. As most of you know, this is an 8-part series in which our guest speakers will address topics such as India, the friend of humanity, crossing borders, the war and self-determination, Sri Aurobindo's warnings against the world state, and others. And of course, with us today is Dr. Sumitra Basu, who will address the 3 steps of Vishnu, from family to nation to human unity. So we welcome you, as always, Dr. Basu, and quite an honor to have you joining us in this very important topic, of which we know that you have done a lot of writing and has expertise in this area. So we appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us today. And we also welcome Martha Orton, who is with us and may have a couple other speakers join on the panel. I did want to just remind everyone that we have opened a WhatsApp group for those interested in posting any questions to our speakers. We have Dr. Basu, Martha, Vladimir, and other speakers that are part of this group, so feel free to post your questions or comments. And if you're not already part of this group and would like to join, just put your WhatsApp number and name in the chat box sometime during this session. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started with the topic. In the Ideal of Human Unity's chapter on the destiny of nations, Sri Aurobindo states, the study of the growth of the nation unit under the pressure of a growing inner need and idea, but by the agency of political, economic, and social forces, shows us a progress that began from a loose formation in which various elements were gathered together for unification, proceeded through a period of strong concentration and cohesion, in which the conscious national ego was developed, fortified, and provided with a center and instruments for its organic life, and passed on to a final period of assured separate existence and internal unity as against outside pressure, in which liberty and an active and more equal share of all in the benefits of the national life became possible. And Sri Aurobindo continues, if the unity of the human race is to be brought about by the same means and agents, and in a similar fashion to that of the nation, then we should expect it to follow a similar course. This is the most likely probability, and it seems to be consistent with the natural law of all creation, which starts from the loose mass, the more or less amorphous vague of forces and materials, and proceeds by contraction, constriction, solidification, and to a firm mold, in which the rich evolution of various forms of life is at last securely possible, unquote. So continuing on this theme, Dr. Sumitra Basu again will address the topic, the 3 steps of Vishnu, from family to nation to human unity. Most of you know Dr. Basu, who has been a frequent speaker and participant here on New Perspectives. But for those that may not know him, I just had something come across my screen, sorry. Those that may not know Dr. Basu, he is a psychiatrist working with consciousness paradigms, and he conducts workshops on personal growth and is a founder editor of Namaha, which is the Journal of Integral Health. He has authored the book Integral Health, and along with Dr. Michael Miovich, has also authored the book Consciousness-Based Psychology, which looks at psychopathology and counseling from an entirely new perspective that arises from the experiential teachings of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. And this book is available on Amazon for any of you that may be interested. It's an absolutely excellent book, and we would encourage you to purchase and read it. And with that, I would like to go ahead and welcome you again and turn it over to you, Dr. Sumitra Basu.
So thank you for inviting me to speak. And today's topic is a very important topic. It is also very close to my heart. And I would like to share the screen. So Sri Aurobindo is known as the prophet of Indian nationalism. But what is not much appreciated is that once he was inwardly assured of India's freedom, he was inwardly and spiritually assured of India's freedom, he turned his focus on internationalism, human unity. So this fact is known, but it is not appreciated that much. Sri Aurobindo is always classified as a die-hard nationalist in India, but he was as much a nationalist and as much an internationalist. And he initiated this quest during the turmoil and agitation of World War I, 1915 to 1918, when he wrote The Ideal of Human Unity, 3 decades before India's freedom. So that is important. So Sri Aurobindo, you see, we have always known him to be the prophet of Indian nationalism, but he was actually a very internationalist to the core of his heart. The nationalism was also a step towards internationalism. The nationalism was a step towards internationalism. One step to it was not the final thing. And the main psychological problem he found that divides nationalism and internationalism is the disharmony between individualism and collectivism. You see that one of the reasons of the collapse of the USSR was that the brilliant analysis of class conflicts, the class conflicts were analyzed brilliantly by Marxism, but it was not followed by an equally brilliant analysis of the conflict between the individual and the collectivity. So the conflict between the classes is important, but the conflict between the individual and the collectivity is more basic. That was not given much attention. And I believe that this is one of the reasons of the collapse of USSR. Of course, there are many reasons, but one basic reason is this. And Sri Aurobindo's involvement in politics gave him the idea of constructing a harmony between the two. And science of politics cannot deal with this issue, as egoism in the individual and collective life go on changing denouements. So science of politics cannot decide this issue. So this is a crux of the problem. Then how to unite individuality and collectivism? How do you make a harmony between individual and collectivism? How do you make a harmony between the individual and the collectivity? So that is one thing. That is still one thing. And Sri Aurobindo deals in the ideal of human unity with this issue, and in chapter after chapter he goes on developing until he comes to the end, when in the religion of humanity he will be sort of what you call completing his endeavor. Now, Sri Aurobindo looks at the whole problem from an evolutionary context, in evolutionary consciousness. Of course, when I speak of evolution in Sri Aurobindo, I am not directly speaking of the biological evolution. I am speaking of the evolution of consciousness with which Sri Aurobindo is concerned, and which is going pari passu with the scientific evolution. The scientific evolution or the biological evolution is one thing, but the evolution of consciousness, which is going on behind, is a basic thing, is a more basic evolution. And Sri Aurobindo is concerned with the evolution of consciousness. And from the consciousness perspective, at first we have material life, which is more with persistence than progress. Material life is more with persistence than progress, more with self-repetition than self-enlargement. more with self-repetition than self-enlargement. So this results in uniformity in material life. That is important. Uniformity in material life is important because when material life came, that was so much heterogeneity. There was so much heterogeneity. So you need to have uniformity to deal with the heterogeneity. And that manifested in the gregarious nature of human groups. Association became necessary for survival. So the very result of uniformity in material life gave the uh, impetus for association of human groups. And uniformity brought safety, security, self-preservation. You see, uniformity brought safety, security, self-preservation. The dominant idea of all collectivism. Sri Aurobindo says that this is the dominant idea of all collectivism. The uniformity brings safety, security, and self-preservation. And then next, life principle appears. And life principle unsettled the uniformity, brought in vitality and quest for progressive perfection. So the life principle unsettled the uniformity. The uniformity was there in material life, and when the life principle came in, when vitality came in, then this quest for progressive perfection came in. Human being groups became complex with clash between freedom of individual and uniformity of group norms, leading to the mighty clash between individualism and collectivism. So human beings groups became complex, increasingly complex. And as the human being groups became increasingly complex, the freedom of the individual and the uniformity of group norms were not were not seeing eye to eye. You see, the freedom of the individual and the uniformity of group norms, there was a wide clash between them. And this clash ultimately resulted in the individualism, the clash between individualism and collectivism. So that is the genesis. And Sri Aurobindo explains that the human being is a transitional being in the trajectory of evolution and consciousness perspective.
I think your camera, there we go. Camera was off for a second.
Sri Aurobindo explains that the human being is a transitional being in the trajectory of evolution, and the consciousness perspective facilitated the emergence of higher models of human beings who would form higher order Gnostic societies, where freedom would see ultimately, you see that if the human being is a transitional being and the consciousness facilitates the emergence of higher models of human beings, not the present model, the higher models of human beings who would form higher order Gnostic societies, where freedom would be intuitive, spontaneous, and truthful, and consonance with the inner law of love, light, right thinking, right action. And there would automatically it would not be in conflict with discipline. Of course, this is a far off model that the human beings as a transitional being, that human beings evolve into higher models of humanity, which Sri Aurobindo believes that it will happen, and they would form higher order Gnostic societies where freedom would be intuitive, spontaneous, truthful, and in consonance with the inner law of love, light, right thinking, and right action, and therefore would not be in conflict with any discipline. In such a milieu, individualism and collectivism would get spontaneously harmonized. But this is a very high thing. This is a very high order. This is not possible at the present state of humanity. But we can dream of this state when the higher order beings would be spontaneously intuitive, spontaneously doing their freedom. That means that is freedom without disharmony. That is freedom without disharmony. That will be marked in this group, in this kind of Gnostic society. That is freedom, but the freedom and there is no disharmony. So there is a very tall order. This high dream of philosophical anarchism, Sri Aurobindo says this, the high dream of philosophical anarchism would not materialize unless the human being consciously participates in the evolution of consciousness. It would not materialize unless the human being consciously participates in the evolution of consciousness. And pari passu with the individual's progress, the collectivity has also to progressively shift its denouement to support the continual unfolding of human potentials along the evolutionary trajectory of consciousness. The collectivity cannot suppress the human potentials. The collectivity has always to support the continuous unfolding of human potentials. The collectivity, as usual, it acts by suppressing at the present state. It suppresses more than helping the unfolding. It suppresses more than the supporting the unfolding of human potentials. But the collectivity at that time, it has to progressively shift its denouement to support the continual unfolding of human potentials. That is important. The collectivity has traversed many formations, ranging from the tribe and clan to commune to become a living group unit in the garb of the nation. So from the family, it has traveled to the nation. It started at one point. It started with the family. Before the family, also there were groups, but then the family consolidated, and then the family, the tribes and clans and communes were formed from families, and ultimately the collectivity became a living group unit in the garb of a nation. The nation idea has consolidated in the psyche of the race and would persist. Remember, Sri Aurobindo says this, that it would persist till it is surpassed by the whole of humanity. So it is not going to go away. The nation idea has consolidated in the psyche of the race and would persist till it is surpassed by the whole of humanity. So we are at the level of the nation idea at present. At present, from the family, we have come to the nation, and we are at the level of the nation idea. And this nation idea is going to persist till it is surpassed by the whole of humanity. And with time, of course, the nation becomes a state. The nation as a psychological unit had to be buttressed by administrative laws, territorial integrities, and political sovereignty to develop into a state. So at one time, the nation develops into a nation state. At one time, the nation develops into a nation state. So that is an important thing, a very important phenomenon. The nation, from the nation to the state. So the nation is a psychological idea. The nation idea is born psychologically, but after some time, it has to be buttressed by administrative laws, territorial integrities, and political sovereignty to develop into a state. However, this shift from the psychological status of the nation idea to the administrative domain of the state idea brought new equations. The state transgresses its limits to dictate the intellectual and moral development of the whole community. Sri Aurobindo quipped, the attempt of the state to grow into an intellectual and moral being is one of the most interesting phenomena of modern civilization. So you see, when it's shifting from the psychological status of the nation idea to the administrative domain of the state idea, then there are new equations are formed. And the state transgresses its limits to dictate the intellectual and moral development of the whole community. The state actually transgresses its limits to dictate the intellectual and moral development of the whole community. And that is why Sri Aurobindo gives a very important statement. The attempt of the state to grow into an intellectual and moral being is one of the most interesting phenomena of modern civilization.
Dr. Basu, we have on your right-hand side there selected slides and things that you can just, you'll see an X there next to slide transition. And I think if you just hit that X, then it'll collapse that. So we're getting another side panel on your right side.
So what should I do?
See where it says slide transition on that right side bar, and across from it there's an X. I think you just down into the panel.
Down. That you also click, yes, and this X next below.
Down in.
No, remove that. Yeah, X. Yeah.
Right, you're almost on. Whoops, you're almost on it. Right,
X.
a little bit over.
X.
A little more to your right.
Yes. Yeah, click on it, please.
The X. There.
Click. No, you have to click on it.
This goes to close.
Yeah. Click on it.
I close it.
Yeah. Close. Yeah, thank you.
So the attempt of the state to grow into an intellectual and moral being is one of the most interesting phenomena of modern civilization. So it is in this background of an evolutionary trajectory towards a freely conscious individual, the passion of the nation idea, the administrative rigidities of the state idea, that Sri Aurobindo proceeds to visualize a global unity which could take two forms. You see, Sri Aurobindo is speaking from the background of an evolutionary trajectory. He is taking the consideration of he is considering the conscious individual, the passion of the nation idea, and the administrative rigidities of the state idea. And considering all this together, Sri Aurobindo proceeds to visualize a global unity which could take two forms: a federation of free nations or distribution of the earth into a few great transnational hegemonies. So either a federation of free nations. Sri Aurobindo says that the next stage would be a federation of free nations or distribution of the earth into few great transnational hegemonies. And Sri Aurobindo is speaking it from the evolutionary perspective. And he also hinted that a practical combination of the two ideas could be the foundation of a new enduring order of things. A practical combination of the two ideas could be the foundation of a new enduring order of things. So a premature enforcement of symmetrical homogeneity by effacing heterogeneous elements could provide counterproductive. A premature enforcement of symmetrical homogeneity by effacing heterogeneous elements could prove counterproductive. There could be even resurgence of the empire idea from the subconscious of the race. Because you see, whatever, according to Sri Aurobindo, that as Freud said, that everything is there in the unconscious, everything rejected is there, resides in the unconscious, and there can be a resurgence of whatever is there in the unconscious. So in the collective unconscious of the psyche, the empire idea is still there, and there can be a resurgence of the empire idea from the collective unconscious of the psyche of the race. So a premature enforcement of symmetrical homogeneity by effacing heterogeneous elements could prove counterproductive. Perhaps a loose confederation characterizing a federal heterogeneous conglomerate would be preferable, where the right of self-determination could support particularism instead of separatism. Sri Aurobindo says that separatism and particularism, he gives examples, as in the formation of the British nation, the Scotland and Wales, there was no problem as the problem with Ireland. You see, the problem with Ireland was not solved, but the problem with Wales and Scotland was solved because they were more, what we call, their problem was the problem of particularism. But for Ireland, the problem was the problem of separatism. For Ireland, the problem was the problem of separatism. For Wales and Scotland, the problem was with particularism. So, with the right of self-determination was to support particularism instead of separatism. Particularism is all right, and it is understandable. The right of self-determination would always be there. A multiple unity where the subunits of a heterogeneous aggregate would retain their uniqueness while surpassing their limitations could be the transcript of the future. But the subunits of a heterogeneous aggregate would retain their uniqueness. You see, everybody, every group, every collectivity has got an uniqueness by itself. People don't want to lose that uniqueness. People have a right for self-determination to retain their uniqueness. To retain their uniqueness while surpassing their limitations could be the transcript of the future. So this is an important, a multiple unity. But Sri Aurobindo has used this word many times, multiple unity. A multiple unity where the subunits of a heterogeneous aggregate would retain their uniqueness while surpassing their limitations could be the transcript of the future. What would the future of the nation then? In such a setup, what would be the future of the nation? The persistence of national egoisms can always precipitate armed conflicts, and the time spirit could move towards eventual dissolution of the nation. The persistence of national egoisms can always precipitate armed conflicts, which we see still today. In the 21st century, we still see today the national egoisms precipitating armed conflicts. And if this continues, the time spirit could move towards eventual dissolution of the nation. Sri Aurobindo hinted at two possible outcomes. Either the gradual dominance of the idea of Sapatri, the citizen of the world citizen, Sapatri that runs counter to the nation idea. So there will be always a group of people who will not be interested in nationalism. They will be more interested in internationalism. They will be more interested to be a citizen of the world than a citizen of a particular nation. Some people will always be like that, or some people might evolve into that. I understand this because I myself feel for quite some years that I no longer belong only to India, but I belong to the whole world. So I believe that, and then when I read Sri Aurobindo's words that the gradual dominance of the idea of Sampatri, then I understand that why I had this feeling, why I have this feeling now, that I don't feel that I am exclusively Indian. I feel that I am exclusively for the whole world. Or the persistence of the nation with vigorous particularism within a larger unity. A nation with vigorous particularism, not separatism. They don't want to be separate, but they want to be particular. They want to be unique. They want to be there in their own way. They want to manifest in their own way within a larger unity. That is permissible. That is understandable. That is permissible. Some people with too much, some cultures who are too evolved cultures, too rich cultures, would not really like to lose their cultural heritage. They would not like to lose their aesthetic heritage. You see, there are some nations who would be very richly endowed with some qualities of the others, and they would not want to sacrifice those things. They would want to remain and develop more those things. So they would be more with vigorous particularism within a larger unity. That can happen. Finally, the nation may persist, but Sri Aurobindo says with a sense of humor, but with a reduced and subjected vitality. With a reduced and subjected vitality, vitality is subjected to a larger principle of unity, or even without any real vitality. or any spirit of particularism or separatism as a convenience, an administrative rather than a psychological fact. Sri Aurobindo says with sense of humor, like a French department or an English county. The nation may persist, but with a reduced and subjected vitality, or even without any real vitality, or any spirit of particularism or separatism, as a convenience, as an administrative rather than a psychological fact, like a French department or an English county. But Sri Aurobindo cautions that the reduced vitality of the nation can retain sufficient mechanical distinctness to reassert if the assimilation is mechanical. The reduced vitality, you cannot take it for granted. The reduced vitality of a nation cannot be taken for granted. It can have sufficient mechanical distinctness to reassert itself if the assimilation is mechanical. So you cannot, what you call, accept the reduced vitality as final. You cannot do that because the unconscious is there, the collective unconscious is there, and anything can reassert itself if needed. But still, this is surprising what Sri Aurobindo says, that the destiny of the nation finally would be as a convenience and an administrative rather than a psychological fact, like a French department or an English county. That is, though Sri Aurobindo said this in jest, but it is important. And Sri Aurobindo speculated that international unification could be in the form of a centralized world state or a looser world union. That could be a close federation or simple confederation. Either a centralized world state or a looser world union. The looser federal setup would be more desirable than the world state. You see, the looser federal setup would be more desirable than the world state, as it would give ample scope to the principle of variation needed for free play of life and progress. Whether there could be one such single federation of free national of federations, or two or three such federations in mutual harmony was left to the unborn, better left to the unborn future. Whether there will be one such single federation or two or three such federations in mutual harmony would be more better left to the unborn future. But you see that in between the centralized world state and a looser world union, Sri Aurobindo says that it can happen, either of the two can happen, but it would be more preferable to have a looser world union, which admits the principle of variation more, and that is necessary for the freer play of life and progress. Now, whether there can be one such single federation or two or three such federations in mutual harmony was better left to the unborn future. Yet, a looser confederacy can succumb to centrifugal forces and break up unless there was a saving power. So this is the difference between a centralized world state and a looser world union. In a centralized world state, it will not break up. But a looser confederacy can succumb to centrifugal forces and break up unless there is a saving power. Unless there is a saving power. You see, the centralized world state is more rigid. The looser confederacy is not rigid. It gives more play to freedom. And therefore, it is more accessible to being broken up by centrifugal forces. Unless there is a saving power. And this saving power would be a true religion of humanity. Would be a true religion of humanity. Religion of humanity is a different thing from the concept of religion, what we ordinarily understand. The concept of religion, what we ordinarily understand, and the religion of humanity are two entirely different things. The true religion of humanity arises not from dogmas and creeds, but from the matrix of a unitary consciousness that reflects spiritual universalism. It arises not from creedal dogmas, but from the matrix of a unitary consciousness that reflected spiritual universalism. You see, in Sri Aurobindo's Uttarpara speech, at the end he said a new new nationalism is going to come. Uttar Pradesh speech is a very important speech. The first speech that he gave after he came out from the Alipur jail, the first speech that he gave was Uttar Pradesh speech. It is not very much understood fully. And there he says that there will be a new kind of nationalism. And this new nationalism, what he hints at, will be based on what he hints. It means that it will be based on spiritual universalism. It will be based on new nationalism, which is based on spiritual universalism. So it is this religion of humanity will be reflecting spiritual universalism. It is not ordinarily what we mean by religion. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean in that sense. A religion of humanity means a growing realization that there is a secret spirit, a divine reality in which we are all one. But more than any other, the spiritual life insists on freedom and variation in its self-expression and means of development. The spiritual life insists on freedom and variation in self-expression and means of development. So there is a secret spirit, a divine reality, which is behind all freedom, behind all variation. And that is the meaning of religion of humanity. That there is a secret spirit, a divine reality behind everything. And it is behind the freedom and variation needed in self-expression and means of development. And in practical terms, this would mean a reappraisal of what Sri Aurobindo considered as the three godheads of the soul. The mantra of the French Revolution: freedom, equality, and brotherhood. You see, from liberty or freedom has come democracy. From equality has come socialism. But the two have never been what you call correlated with each other. Freedom and equality are not in harmony with each other. Socialism and democracy are not in harmony with each other. And this cannot be unless the brotherhood is established, fraternity principle is established in society, unless the brotherhood principle is established in society. And that brotherhood is to be based on not on mechanical comradeship, as in communism, but on soul comradeship, on soul kinship. So if Sri Aurobindo has said in one of his aphorisms that if communism has to come back in the world, it has to be based not on the mechanical comradeship, but on the soul comradeship, on the soul camaraderie. So the emphasis on liberty makes the ego art on competitive individualism. An emphasis on liberty makes the ego harp on competitive individualism. An assertion of equality ignores the variations in nature. And fraternity has till now failed to consolidate as it is based on mechanical comradeship and egoistic interests. Liberty and equality can be upgraded and harmonized only when fraternity is based on soul kinship. That will lead towards a new psychological basis of world unity. Well, we had today the name of our program webinar as from the family to the nation to the world. And you see that the family is breaking all over the world. The family is breaking all over the world. This is very important that the mother said why the family is breaking. Why the family is breaking? Why the family is breaking all over the world? And you cannot put the clock, the hands of the clock back. You just cannot put the hands of the clock back. You see, as mother said, that as an individual can rise up to the truth, and collectivity also has to rise up to the truth. And the family is the first collectivity which had been given that opportunity to rise up to the truth. Family is the first collectivity that was given the opportunity to rise up to the truth, as an individual can rise up to the truth. But the family has failed in that function. The family has failed in that function. Two-thirds of the world's violence against the person in court cases, violence against the person, two-thirds of these cases are between first-degree relatives all over the world. This is the standard statistics. Two-thirds of the world cases throughout the world, cases of violence against the person is between first-degree relatives. So family has failed. Family has failed. And therefore, mother said that a new family is being formed, a family based on soul kinship, because that is the decree of the divine. The decree of the divine has gone, that the family failed to perform its duty. And therefore, the new family, a family based on soul kinship, a family based on soul comradeship, is now going to form. Of course, mother said that marriages will remain. That is another thing. Marriages will remain, that is another thing. But the families will not remain. When I read this at the beginning of my medical career, as a career as a psychiatrist, when I read this, before that, I launched my career, then I knew that if divorce cases come to me, unnecessarily I should not try to, bring a harmony in a relationship which will not actually occur. It is marked with disharmony. A marital discord case comes, and it is not necessary that I have to always forcibly impose harmony. And together with this family, breaking up of the family, today the whole world is witnessing another thing. Friendships are not taking place. Friendship as an institution is dying. Friendship as an institution, which was the friendship of before, the older days friendship, the older times friendship, that is also dying. Friends are not being formed. You see, when we ask children, who is your best friend, a child will tell you that I don't have a best friend. Most probably, 9 children out of 10 will tell you, I don't have a best friend. I have friends, but I don't have a best friend. And in the friendship also, this principle is there, that the friendship will be based now on soul comradeship. So the time is coming for the soul comradeship to come forward. With the family, breaking of the family, with the breaking of friendship, the soul comradeship is coming more in front. The soul comradeship, this phenomenon of soul comradeship, the phenomenon of soul kinship is coming more in front. And naturally, in the sphere of nations, it is also going to take a big leap. In the sphere of nations, this is also going to take a big leap. On June 7, 1967, the mother recorded a vision of Sri Aurobindo explaining to her that Sri Aurobindo was not in his physical body, Sri Aurobindo was in his subtle body, and mother recorded a conversation with him on a subtle body, or in his subtle body. And the conversation and the message that was given to her was a federation of all nations and countries without exception, all continents. A single federation, the federation of all human nations of the earth. A vision of Sri Aurobindo explaining to her. And this vision is this: a federation of all nations and countries, without exception, all continents. A single federation, the federation of all human nations of earth. This is very important. This is the future of the world as envisioned by Sri Aurobindo and given to the mother, that a federation of all nations and countries, without exception, all continents, a single federation, the federation of all human nations of earth. And she elaborated further, mother elaborated further, and this elaboration is very interesting. She says that a group, a governing group, consisting of one representative of each country, the most able men from the standpoint of political and economic organization. You see, she's not speaking from the standpoint of spiritual organization. She's very practical. She tells this very practically. From the standpoint of political and economic organization, the most able person from that country. And nothing, and secondly, nothing of the proportional question, which would give large countries many representatives and small countries only one. There will be one representative of each country, whether the country is small, whether the country is big, whether the country is powerful, or whether the country is least powerful, underdeveloped. Because each country represents one aspect of the problem. And they would sit in rotation. And they would sit in rotation. So you see this group, a governing group of that federation, which consists one representative from each country, the most able men from the standpoint of political and economic organization. She avoids spiritual organization. She's very practical. She's talking about political and economic organization, one of the most practical persons of that country who is most representative of the political and economic organization. And second thing is nothing of the proportional question that big countries with not with bigger numbers. Each country has only got one member, whether it is a developed country, super developed country, or an underprivileged country. And third thing, because each country represents one aspect of the problem. Each country represents one aspect of the problem. And the next point is they would sit in rotation. They would sit in rotation, which means that by rotation, somebody would take the lead. By rotation, somebody for some period would take the lead, as happens in some of the organs of the United Nations. So this is the future. This is the future as emphasized by Mother and Sri Aurobindo. One single federation of the world, and that federation having a governing group consisting of one representative of each country, the most able men from the standpoint of political and economic organization, nothing of the proportional question. Every country represents one aspect of the problem, and they would sit in rotation. So I stop the PowerPoint presentation now, and we are open for discussion.
Thank you so much, Sumitra Basu. That was beautiful. We traveled from the family clan to the nation formations and finally to the world unity, or human unity rather. Of course, there are many questions about nature, about how nature does it, and about animal kingdoms and, surviving of the earth, which are not included here. They are kind of touching the aspects of human development, and it would be nice to also kind of look at them in some way. I hope that there are some questions here. There are a few people on our panel also. There is Makaran Paranjpe and Parikshit Singh and Martha Orton. They're all here. Only their videos are off. They also could have some questions to you and some clarifications or some reflections. So it would be nice to hear and to see everyone.
Yes, Dr. Ketegi Chokani has a question.
Yes, most probably. Wait a minute. Yes, Makrant. Yes, please go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Basu. Good to hear your exposition. My question after the last, our dear brother Vladimir said that the Earth has a special purpose in the evolutionary scheme. I was reflecting on that very deeply, and I felt that some of the imperfections on Earth, as well as the impossibility of human unity on the basis that we have tried so far. I mean, both these points came up last time. were actually making me think, about this whole question. And my question relates to your presentation today, Dr. Basu, which is fundamentally, what is the role of criticism in the evolutionary scheme? Which is to say, is devotion alone enough for evolution? Or is criticism also important? Now, let me relate it directly to what you said, the wonderful statement that you read out by the mother after the vision that she had of Sri Aurobindo. We see how difficult that would be to carry out on a global scale when it has not even succeeded at Auroville, the city of the future. Therefore, my question to you is, once again, are we to look at these prophecies, as it were, with a critical outlook, or are we to believe with all our heart and soul that one day, sometime, it will all come true? Thank you so much.
I see your question in two parts. First is the role of the criticism versus the faith and devotion. Sri Aurobindo believes in the evolution of cognitive consciousness. He has given a whole map of how the cognitive consciousness is going to evolve. And when it evolves from rationality to the higher levels, it doesn't lose the rationality. You see, one of these important stages above the reason is intuition. And one of the hallmarks of intuition is intuitive discrimination. That intuition also discriminates. That means it does the work of reason, but at a higher plane, at a higher ambit, it does the work of reason. So reason is not left out. Reason is not left out. Criticism is not left out. From devotion, this criticism is not left out. The cognitive consciousness has to evolve, and in evolution, it has to. All the other stages which have preceded it has to remain, and they have to be upgraded. In fact, they would be upgraded. Now, it is very difficult, of course, what you say. The second thing is very difficult because it has not succeeded till now anywhere. But it is not going to succeed until mankind takes a step further in the evolution of consciousness. You see, unless we grow in consciousness, it is not going to start happening. We have to grow up in consciousness. Then only it will start happening, all these things. Therefore, I say that Sri Aurobindo is viewing this from an evolutionary context.
Interestingly, is that just comes to my mind that in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Yajnavalkya gives us actually a format of the future, human unity. When he speaks to Maitreyi, his wife, you remember she asked to give his last word before he went to the Vanaprastha. And he said in this beautiful way, it is not for the sake of the wife that the wife is dear, but for the sake of the spirit, Atman, the wife is dear. It's not for the sake of the husband that the husband is dear, but for the sake of the Atman, or the divine, the husband is dear. It's not for the sake of children that children are dear. It's not for the sake of humanity even, of the all that the all is dear, but for the sake of the divine that all is dear. So this is the most probably the ultimate formula which we have to arrive at. But that what I see, and I have a question with this, that it's as if the aspect of love or brotherhood or that, fraternity, psychic love and relation is being established from the family first. And we see it is in the animal kingdom, the mother will protect her child till death, sacrifice her life. It's something unthinkable, it's established somewhere in nature. Of course, human beings are a different matter. We are transitional beings. But then we move towards a bigger unity, like a crowd or the flock. And in the flock, also individuals sacrifice themselves for the collectivity in the animal kingdom. So there is this kind of what we human beings moving to the nation state or the nation soul, because there is a nation soul, it's a spiritual entity which allows every soul to love the person who is not from your family, to have those intimate quality relations with another being who is not part of your clan. But because you have common language, common culture, common ways of expressing oneself, common land, common history, you can kind of exercise those intimate psychic qualities and create the relations within the bigger body, and the second step of Vishnu nation, those love relations. Now, it's like a training ground. Once we are trained on this ground of the nation, we are becoming ready for the, appreciation of all the differences. And you notice that countries who actually already formed their nations, like we see in Europe, Norway, France, they don't need even borders among themselves. They don't need police to police their borders. They feel the identity of their land, with their culture, with their language, and they are self-sufficient. It's an amazing thing. When you cross the border from France to Germany or from Germany to France, you feel the change. It's a psychological change. There is only field in the road, and you cross to France and you feel this is the French field. There is some kind of tangible identity with the land. And as we know, the earth represents the psychic being of the universe. It gives us the ground for the expressions of those higher entities, soul, so to say, nation souls entities, very particular formations. And if this, and the last message, what you referred to as the federation of all nations, like a bouquet of all different flowers, big flowers, beautiful, and small, flowers from the field, they're also needed for the completion of this divine beauty on earth. So I think this development and nation is a very important part. It is that part which actually creates psychic relations in the bigger body. And knowing, kind of learning from it, we can move to the really, truly human unity. Only then, before that, it becomes very questionable, because we cannot truly appreciate people from other countries, from other nations, from other cultures, other languages. We can't truly if we don't love our own country. So there's something here which is very special about Sri Aurobindo, these 3 steps of Vishnu. I wanted to ask you about this love transition, or this fraternity transition towards the highest possibility. Do you think this is the kind of hidden message of Sri Aurobindo, or meaning?
Sri Aurobindo believed in higher order anarchy. So a state where there will be ideal freedom without any disharmony. The dream of high philosophical anarchism, but that is his dream. Now Ketki has a question. Yes, she has raised her hand.
Oh, Ketki. Shall we bring her in?
Ketki, you can ask this question.
I promoted her.
I'm also promoting you to panelist if you want, or if you just want to speak. Ah, here she comes. You can just unmute yourself, and if you would like to show your video, that would be nice. There we go. Go ahead and.
Dr. Basu, one comment and one question. One is I'm seeing as a social scientist, I'm seeing that not just families, but different kinds of groups are coming together, which are not related to each other by blood or any sexual relation or any sort. So alternative that families are coming into play. Now, when you talk about soul kinship, I want to know what are the characteristics of soul kinship, so that when I do this study, I can see whether that is in place or not. What are the how do we understand that this is a soul kinship rather than just of your mere friendship or whatever? Like, how do we characterize that soul comradeship? So then it's easier for me to study as a social.
It cannot be characterized very objectively. It is a very subjective thing at present. I don't know in the future if objectively it can be characterized, but at present it is something which is subjectively characterized, which you have to feel by your intuition. You have to develop the supra-rational methods of knowledge, the supra-rational techniques, understand by intuition. At present, this is at that level.
Mr. Basu, I've joined on KT screens and I'm in Manipal. What I wanted to say was, like, first the family starts with kinship. So, like, the attitude of one should be that, like, instead of having the ego come in, when there's disharmony between, then I should take it as if it's a soul-to-soul connection. Then this harmony disappears, then we can go on the larger scale of am I right in that way thinking?
And that you can do, but that will always not be successful in the family.
And even with friends or anyone or even known people, unknown
with anyone, it will not be successful. It will not be very easy to do it. It will not be very easily successful. It is a very difficult thing, and it is a rare thing, but it will come.
Yeah, because I've noticed when I say, like, suppose this harmony has come, but from inside, if I say I am connected soul to soul with so and such a person, then somehow I've noticed the change comes over automatically. Is
That's all right. But to have a sustainable change, you have to develop your psychic being. Right. First of all, one has to be in contact with one's psychic being, and then only the other things will manifest.
Okay. Thank you, Dr.
There is one more question here from Santosh.
Yes. Santosh Mahapaत्र. Yes, Sri Aurobindo has suggested when some nations do not align with that perspective, and he has suggested that one of the things also, force also cannot be misinterpreted. Correct use of force also might be necessary. A correct use of force might also be necessary in that case. But that is why Sri Aurobindo considered a loose confederation, where these heterogeneous elements would be free to come together. That is why he didn't want a centralized world state, where these things would be more apparently discordant.
He's also, Sri Aurobindo even supported the revolution, Russian Revolution. When he read the work of Lenin, which was the right of nations for self-determination. Yeah? Lenin wrote that book, after which they removed Lenin and created totalitarian regime. And basically, Stalin was totally different, from Lenin's views. But if, of course, the self-determination of nations could be maintained, and they willingly come to the unity, to the bigger confederation, then, of course, this is the ideal situation, and everybody is free to develop. Yeah.
In 1917, he was studying Russia the whole year. In the Ideal of Human Unity, if you read the chapters from 1917, from February onwards, he was observing the Russian phenomenon, and he was trying to find out ways and means that comes out from that whole thing to support the world union.
Mm. Mm. Yeah.
Unity of some nations, unity of some countries would give some clues to the wider field of world union. He was looking for that. And he was observing the whole Russian Revolution.
Yeah.
I just have a quick question for you, Dr. Basu, now that Russia has been mentioned. I would be interested in your take or understanding of what's really going on between Ukraine and Russia. If you mentioned national egoism, and kind of what the underlying drive and impetus is here, and how important the outcome will be in terms of this whole movement towards human unity.
Well, what is your exact question?
Your take on the war between Russia and Ukraine and the importance of the outcome towards this movement towards world unity.
You see, this is the national egoism at work. It is the national egoism at work here. Behind this war, if you see between the lines, it is more of a war between two national egoisms. And we have to go through these phases to surpass them. We have to go through these phases. So what I feel that we have to learn what we learn from this is to outgrow our national egoisms, so that these things don't happen. So this is also it is something teaching us. This war is teaching us that we have to go get over national egoisms, and the response of this whole world towards it is to go beyond national egoisms. The response of the European Union to the war, you see, the whole response has to go beyond national egoisms.
I thought also about this, that maybe this is imperialism, that strong power, subconscious power, which is rising. It's not really from Russian side so much nationalism, but it's more like imperialism, They are trying to keep the nations under...
Egoism of the imperialistic nation. On the Russian side is the higher imperialistic ego is there.
Yes, that's what I thought. It's more like, to have a great empire, to continue, Soviet Union to revive and so on. Right. If anybody else, yes, there is Margaret asking something. To give all relations to mother, then the inner work will happen. Please reflect on nation level.
Maybe we need some clarification.
Right, it's to connect with the divine.
Let me see if I can open her mic here. Okay, Marguerite, I'm opening. Oh, good, she's coming over.
Yeah.
Margaret, if you want to, your mic is open if you want to just clarify your comment or question to Dr. Basu.
I'm living in Auroville since long, and I experience more and more how in daily life and in personal relation and also recording to groups, how when I open to the mother and there's a question in me, or I get shown by her also, or by the energy, what is has to be resolved, to transform, and then how this is happening in on my understanding to the nation level or to higher one. in a way what Dr. Harabinda Basu just said, that and how he sees the conflict Russia. So this similar I got before also. So it is the question how this inner opening to the mother, to the supreme divine, whatever you call it, can give these answers to this understanding.
Of course, it gives an answer to that understanding, but for that, a nation has to be fully conscious, to be open to the mother. So that is what is wanting. That is what has to develop, and that will develop through evolution. As higher beings come, as Gnostic societies are formed, then that will come. At the present state, it is an ideal goal. But to come to that situation, to come to that position, one has to evolve further. What she already said, the higher order beings, Gnostic society, all that has to evolve. Then only that thing will happen, what you are telling, at the national level. At a personal level, it is happening. But at a national level, at the international level to happen, this collectivity has to develop also.
I mean, also reflecting in outer will, I often feel who is open then as a soul level, or you say in the mother's presence. No? It is possible, especially in outer will, I think it is very much working. If you're open to the higher one, to the mother, you can recognize what is working with the other people or other souls.
Actually,
I
maybe
think
Margaret is talking. Mother wanted also to organize the whole international zone with pavilions. It's interesting, a project which somehow did not develop fully. And those pavilions were meant to kind of to teach us, to help us to learn about different nations and to appreciate the difference, yes, and to love the varieties of the divine expression in cuisine, in dressing, in songs, in folklore, in all different ways how nations live. And that would be, of course, the project to help humanity on the subtle level, you know, with really appreciation in one place, in spiritual place, where people look at this development from spiritual point of view, to help humanity to kind of harmonize between the countries. I always felt the moment we really finish the pavilions, the international zone, we will help humanity tremendously. But somehow it is stumbling. That means we have still to go through many things. It's just Marta is here. Marta, you would like to say a few words?
Well, thank you. I think you make a very important point, Vladimir. It relates very much to what Dr. Basu said about Sri Aurobindo taking into an international perspective. That's really very important. And also that relates to a federation and self-determination. Ultimately, he envisions a federation of nations, which includes their self-determination. That's so significant. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Dr. Basu, so much for your time and sharing your knowledge with us, and for everybody that has stayed with us and participated. We appreciate it. And as always, this recording will be out on Knowledge Bank so that you can go back and re-review, and we'll put Dr. Basu's slides out there also. But thank you all once again. And thank you, Dr. Basu.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste, Madhvanji.